Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Prue Klein and I'm the Marketing Coordinator here at Wine Communicators of Australia. Today, we'll be hearing from Rowena Curlewis, co-founder and CEO of Denominations, a drink specialist design agency with offices in Sydney, London and San Francisco. In this webinar, Rowena will be talking about sustainability on the board agenda globally. She will share the latest innovations and launches from around the globe and explore how sustainability may fit in with your brand. We have allowed plenty of times for any questions you may have to be answered at the end of the webinar. However, feel free to send them through to me as they come to mind. You can do this via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. As usual, this webinar will be recorded and a link to the recording will be sent to you should you wish to watch it at a later stage. It is now my pleasure to hand over to you, Rowena, for your presentation.
Thanks very much, Prue, and good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who are unaware of Denomination or haven't worked with us, as Prue said, we are a drinks design specialist agency. We work across the full spectrum of drinks, so wine obviously is our dominant category, but also beer, spirits, cider, and RTDs. We do have offices across the globe in London, San Francisco, as well as Sydney. And that is that really allows us to be across trends globally, both within drinks design, but then greater trends such as sustainability, which you've heard of a lot lately. So we work across clients from our three offices, big and small, so very big global brands like Treasury and AB InBev, and then we work for tiny little boutique agents and companies like Dexter in the Mornington Peninsula and House of Cards in Western Australia. Denomination is an agency that is full of really passionate and committed environmentalists. So we have a sustainability team that is driving the agenda, both in terms of production, strategy, design, and account service. Sustainability is also a personal project and passion for our co-founder, Margaret Nolan, and myself. And what we've done within the business is we've been actually educating each other internally through a series of seminars that we've given each other based on particular topics. And then over the past 6 months, we've had some intensive training by our partners, Circulathon Consulting in the UK. You can see here a number of different topics that we've covered. For designers to be talking about carbon calculations and other metrics is pretty full on, but you can see by that how much importance we're placing on sustainability. At the end of next month, we will receive our climate neutral certification, which will mean that everything coming out of all three offices will be carbon neutral globally. So every day, our sustainability team plows through daily media articles and reports and compiles them all together for, I guess, relevant reading topics for us all. Now, I'm sure everyone online knows how much is written about sustainability, and it can be really overwhelming at times. So we believe that as packaging designers, we have a duty of care in order to make sure that the paper stock we're recommending, the bottle shapes that we're choosing, the discussions we're having with suppliers and clients alike are going to help drive that sustainability agenda and in doing so help care for our earth. We also know that sustainability is a really big deal for wine businesses globally, and many of the listed companies are putting sustainability front and centre. These include Treasury and Accolade and Pernod Ricard and the like. In June 2020, TWE launched its global packaging guidelines that obviously we are very much across. Tim Ford said it was designed to minimise negative environmental impacts associated with production, distribution, and disposal of its wine and product packaging. And you can see even here from a snapshot of TWE's website that sustainability is really upfront in terms of what they're communicating to their different audiences. Accolade Wines is a signatory to the Australian Packaging Covenant, and in January this year, Accolade Wines Europe announced that their entire branded portfolio, so that's 8 global brands coming out of Accolade Wines Europe, will be carbon neutral. So some very big steps there. Pernod Ricard have this program called Good Times from Good Place, which is a sustainability and responsibility roadmap. And by 2025, they have promised to ban all promotional items made from single-use plastic and ensure that 100% of packaging will be recyclable, combustible, reusable, or bio-based. Additionally, by 2030, the group will pilot 5 new circular ways of distributing wine and spirits and help increase recycling rates across its top 10 largest markets that have low recycling levels. So Pernod Ricard are really walking the walk as well as talking the talk. There are some large Australian wineries who've been doing this for some time, and Yalumba is certainly one of those who's been driving the sustainability agenda for many years. If you look at the Hillsmith website, it really shows in details the ambitions and actions that they've taken. Here is one example of the latest Y Series design. Now, they have changed all of the bottles for Y Series to a lighter weight bottle. That has meant that annually they are reducing the weight of glass by 167,000 kilos, which is absolutely massive. Taylor's, probably arguably ahead of its time, launched the first carbon neutral wine brand back in 2008. So this was 80 Acres. They had ISO certification, and they started its first LCA, which is life cycle assessment, back then. They also produced their first sustainability report over a decade ago, and they too are a signatory to the Australian Packaging Covenant. So sustainability has been a very big part of what Taylor's has been on about for the past decade and more. And there are many small wineries around Australia doing wonderful things as well. Internationally, Torres has really led the way here in terms of its Torres and Earth program. They started this in 2008, so 13 years ago. And it's interesting that they allocate 11% of their profits every year to investments related to the environment and fight against climate change. They also established the International Wineries for Climate Action, of which quite a few of our clients are already signatories. Other companies in the wine category that have been very vocal about sustainability include Symington Family Estates. Symington is one of our clients. They are certified as a B Corporation. When we design for Symington, it is very obvious that sustainability is key to their philosophy and their directives. They make sure that we specify recycled glass contents, recycled paper content, and there is no plastic that we can use anywhere in their gifting, which is really fantastic. And they're putting a lot of pressure on their suppliers, with us included, to make sure that they are changing the way that suppliers around Europe think about all of the elements that go into wine. It is worth noting that in the EU, the brand owner is deemed by government to be the manufacturer, and therefore they are actually responsible for the product's packaging after the product has been used by the consumer. So this is quite a big change, and it's something that I think will probably be emulated by other governments around the world. And so the brand owners need to be thinking about what happens to that pack after the consumer's used, and how do they bring that back into a circular economy, or at least take responsibility for that. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of innovations and launches around the sustainability sector in an attempt to really drive or at least take advantage of that sustainability movement. Beer in particular, I would say, has done incredibly well in terms of modifying the packaging elements of beer. And I'm going to show you a couple of beer examples as well as other examples from across the drinks category. So the first one is Carlsberg. Now, only a couple of months ago, they announced a trial of a new glass bottle that has a 90% lower carbon impact. So this bottle actually uses 100% biofuel, and the glass content is 100% recycled. Now, they have been able to maintain the quality as opposed to using a mix of recycled and new glass. Unlike other trials or projects that normally have a very small production run, their initial manufacturing quantity was 1 million bottles. So they're very, very serious about moving to this lower footprint bottle. We've heard a lot about paper bottles. So January, Absolute launched this paper bottle, which is their first step to achieve a bio-based bottle that's able to contain spirits. At the moment, it is essentially still a plastic bottle, just in a paper or pulp sheath, which is complicated in terms of recycling, like the separation of the paper from the plastic. And interestingly, they've only made 2,000 bottles just for consumer testing, but it does show the intent to go down that path of achieving a bio-based bottle. Diageo, as you would know, has had a lot of publicity with the Johnnie Walker Black Label paper bottle. Their aim is to have a 100% plastic-free, paper-based spirits bottle. They did say it was going to be launching in early 2021. Clearly, that hasn't happened. I expect it will be late 2021. It's proving to be a very challenging exercise to make sure that the lining of the bottle is it does not contain plastic. In 2020, the Rowena, that esteemed champagne house, launched its second skin case. I don't know if any of you have had the privilege of seeing this. Is a beautiful tactile case around the bottle. It's made from 100% cellulose fibres. It's fully recyclable. If you think about the carbon footprint of this versus an actual gift box, you can understand that lightness really reduces the carbon footprint, and importantly, there's no plastic at all. Garçon Wines is coming out to Australia soon. Accolade has certainly used Garçon on a number of their wine brands from the UK. Now, this bottle was originally developed as a bottle that you put through UK post boxes. And then when they were doing the packaging of these bottles into cartons, they realized that the stackability of the bottles actually maximizes the carton space and therefore reduces the carbon footprint. So they're 40% spatially smaller than a glass bottle and 87% lighter than standard glass. So although they are made out of PET, which obviously has different environmental implications, there is an advantage with these bottles, certainly in terms of their lightness and their ability to be really compact and save on carbon footprint. Seedlip last year launched this beautiful gift set using mycelium. So it's made from mushrooms, fully biodegradable, recyclable, compostable. We've had the material in our office for a couple of years. It has not disintegrated in our office environment. And it's got a really lovely tactility. It doesn't have any aroma of mushrooms like you might expect. And they are looking at really commercializing this on a much larger scale for other brands. So, you know, consideration when you're thinking about gifting, that rather than having foam or plastic insert to potentially have the mycelium instead. Sustainability, not so much in terms of packaging, but certainly in terms of product, is something that is really developing in Europe very quickly, and that includes upcycling of waste. So the owners of Crumbs were horrified to learn that over 200 tons of bread is thrown away every day in Sweden. So this beer actually replaces about 30% of the grain counts with this rescued bread in order to create this, upcycled, environmentally friendly beer, which is doing really, really well in Sweden. Another beer brand, Corona, this was only launched about 3 weeks ago. And this is Corona's new circular form of packaging. It has been 3 years in the making. So the clusters actually use barley straw, obviously a non-tree fibre. It's the leftovers from the farmer's harvest. Then instead of going to waste or mulch, is actually combined with 100% recycled wood fibres to create the stock for these clusters. Now, using the barley straw means that they've had 90% less water in its production than what you'd use with virgin wood processes, with less energy and fewer harsh chemicals. So it really is doing a great job of this circular form of packaging. A bit closer to home now, Rewine in Melbourne sells wine straight from the barrel into special refillable bottles. The idea is that a reuse of a bottle is actually even better than recycling, so less energy, less waste. The bottles have a recycled content with half of the embedded energy of traditional glass bottles. They are sourced locally, so again, they're reducing that carbon footprint, and they're choosing suppliers that really align to their sustainable vision for the future. This is a fantastic example of literally, tick the box in terms of sustainability. So this is a UK brand out by Borough Wines. It has 25 sustainably focused wines. A lot of them are biodynamic and vegan. The label stock is made from bagasse, which is an extraction, it's a byproduct of sugarcane juice. And so it is biodegradable. When consumers purchase this wine, they can do it in 3 different ways. So they can purchase this return bottle or vino tap or a refillable keg. When it's actually delivered to customers in the bottle, it's delivered in recycled plastic crates. And then consumers are encouraged to bring back their bottles back to the shop. Bars and restaurants can also store the bottles, which are collected by merchants all over the UK and then reused again, which means that they're reducing the number of bottles that need to be recycled. Their vino taps are collected, cleaned and refilled, which means that restaurants and bars are really minimising wine waste. And again, those refill kegs are collected and reused. And each time one of those is reused, it saves 16 kilos of glass from being disposed of. So really great case study in full sustainability. A bit closer to home is Tread Softly. This is a brand that we created with Fourth Wave to meet millennial and Gen Z values. So that was about being kind to themselves and about being kind to the planet. So Tread Softly is a wine that is naturally lower in alcohol, and the wine itself is sustainably produced. We launched Tread Softly with a campaign called Raise a Forest with Your Glass, and that was with every dozen bottles sold, Tread Softly would plant a tree. And as of the 18th of March this year, there have been nearly 200,000 trees planted, which has saved 4,153 tonnes of carbon. So an extremely fantastic result. Interestingly, this brand is going from strength to strength in the market, and it's expanded from table wines to a Prosecco in can, and I'd watch this space for what else is happening with this brand. Another innovation from Australia is the recent A Glass Of, which uses sustainability of its packaging as a key driver for consumer consideration and purchase. And you can just see a couple of clips from their website about, you know, what they're actually communicating in terms of the sustainability messaging of the packaging. So how sustainable is the drinks packaging industry? Well, if we take a step back and we look at the whole of the packaging industry, we produce in excess of 4 trillion units a year. That is a horrifying statistic to me. So we really want to make sure that the drinks industry and the wine industry in particular are being really careful with everything that we produce from a packaging standpoint. So in terms of how we rate compared to our colleagues in other FMCG categories, we're pretty good. Not that there's still room for improvement, but I guess one of the key things is that we actually use glass, and glass has a lot of environmental advantages. It's inert, unlike plastics and pulp. It lacks, so when you bury it in the ground, it's just going to stay in the ground. It's not going to disintegrate. It's not going to destroy anything. It's not going to, you know, give off toxic chemicals, etc. It can be recycled, and in some markets the rate of recycling is really high. Unfortunately, in Australia, it's called moderate at 46% recovery rate, but hopefully with some investment by government, we can increase that level of recyclability. However, there are some in the following slides, I'm going to give you some ideas to just prompt, I'd say, mindful thinking when you're actually selecting various components of your packaging. So when you're selecting glass, you know, you can ask, you know, your suppliers how much recycled content is in the bottle. You know, think about what's the weight and what's the carbon footprint, and, you know, at the volumes that you're doing, is that weight justified? Are your bottles being recycled or reused, which is the ideal? Think about how much plastic is being used in transporting the glass to your factory. I'm going to show you some slides a bit later on which will horrify those who are not in the winery. But, you know, talking to our suppliers, you know, can we cut this down? And when you're actually getting that packaging plastic, are you actually recycling it in a soft plastics way? When it gets the paper, it's important to ask how much recycled content there is in there. Or maybe there's other waste materials. And I think Fasson's Grape Crush and Avery Dennison's Grape Touch are fantastic because they're actually using waste materials from the wine process. So they're using grape waste within the paper stock. It's important to know where the paper has been milled and that it's come from an FSC forest. Plastic is an interesting one because we all think of a wine bottle as glass and paper, but actually there is a lot of plastic in the label application. So if you're using a PET liner, which most bottling lines tend to prefer, can you look at them or apply pressure to reduce the weight from PET 30 to PET 23? That will have a massive impact. Now, in Australia, most of the bottling lines prefer PET 30. However, in Europe, a lot of bottling lines have gone down to PET 23 and are actually looking at introducing PET 19. So that's nearly half the weight of the PET 30. Are you recycling the soft plastic from the lining, or are you disposing of it? So these are good questions to ask. If you're using a film under lamination on your labels, have you thought about other alternatives such as the new Rhonda product, which is moisture repellent without that need for an under lamination? I'll show you a couple of technical slides. So this is comparing multi-print white ice with Rhonda. And you can see there's some amazing statistics. So energy is less 37%, water is less 41%, carbon is less 44%. And to put it into sort of layman's language, reducing the energy by 37% is 44 years of powering a typical household, or 873 10-minute showers, or 58 long-haul flights for a passenger. So, you know, really, really key environmental impacts of that. And then if you're actually using a clear plastic sock, such as polyglass, have you considered changing it to something like forest film? Now, forest film is produced using the tall oil from renewables, so milled trees, rather than non-renewable, so fossil fuels. And the forest film is pretty fantastic in terms of an environmental footprint. And you can see here that that you can really use it for anything. It's either completely clear, or you can screen print over it just as you would a normal clear stock. It is more expensive. It's about, from memory, about 40% more expensive. So, but if you're clever in terms of design and the size that you're using, you could potentially absorb those costs or pass them on to your retailers or consumers with communication as to why you're doing that. Inks are an interesting one, and I think it's a lot of a topic of discussion for lots of printers. So whether they're using soy or water-based inks, or whether they're continuing to use mineral-based inks with additives. And then if you're thinking about inks, you know, think about the sustainability benefits of printing digitally. So I was talking to MCC the other day about the future of printing, and they're of the belief that those high-speed digital printers are the way of the future, especially in terms of, you know, the ink usage, because when you pour ink into an offset and then you finish that run, you have to chuck the ink, whereas that doesn't happen with a digital printer, which is great. Think about your closures. Can your screw caps be recycled? Because a lot of the time, if they're on the bottle, that they just fall through the glass crushing and they don't get captured. Are you using a plastic cork closure, and can it, and is it being recycled? When you're actually putting together your cartons, are you using 100% recycled card? And what about the laminated paper that goes around the card? So is that 100% recycled as well? How are you securing the carton? Is it glue or tape? And if it's glue, what's the chemical makeup? If it's tape, is it paper, or is it more plastic? When you think about gifting, obviously in gifting, there's a lot of plastic and foam that has been traditionally used, but there are new companies out there. There's one called Fiberpack. There are many, but Fiberpack, you can actually choose which type of sustainability you want, whether you want it all as recycled paper, whether you want it from an FFC forest, whether you want half and half. And you can see the actual moulding that they do is quite incredible, and it can be used for wine bottles as well. This is a horrifying image sent to me by one of our clients. So just have a look at the amount of plastic of this small boutique winery in Tasmania. There's just plastic everywhere. Now in Tasmania, there is no soft plastics recycling. So all of that plastic goes into the ground. This is something that we really need to be putting pressure on government and pressure on our suppliers to reduce the amount of plastic that is waste. Aluminium is another interesting substrate that we should be thinking about. Obviously, aluminium is 100% recyclable for infinity. It yields savings of approximately 15 to 20%, and some producers claim as 40% due to the lighter weight during shipping and handling, reduced breakage and efficient stacking. The transport, obviously, because it's much lighter, reduces the CO2 emissions by half when you compare that to glass. And don't forget bag and box. This one, a 3 litre bag and box, actually has the least carbon footprint per litre of any wine format, scoring the lowest LCA. So there are a lot of innovations to be keeping your eye on. Grass, for example, as an alternative to pulp. So when you create wood fibre pulp, you use a few thousand litres of water to convert to paper. Whereas if you use grass fibre pulp, you use less than 1 litre per tonne. So this image on the screen is actually an image of a new paper stock produced by cup plants, which are a fast-growing grass and flower in Germany, and they're having some really great results. It's got a beautiful natural texture. It's not yet on wine labels, but you can see the direction that the paper manufacturers are going. We believe that mindful choices are the key to driving sustainability. So sustainability is a buzz term in our industry, and it's something obviously we, and I'm sure you've gathered by now, feel really passionate about. But we do recognise that not all consumers feel that way. So there are often really conflicting reports about how important sustainability is to consumers. So if you look at the Business Insider quote there on the left, value and ease of purchase are still the main drivers of purchase decisions, although sustainability is becoming a bigger factor. And in 2019, by Hotwire, that survey found 47% of internet users had ditched products and services from a brand that violated their personal values, and protecting the environment topped that list. So there is this weight of, consumers really wanting to support brands that align to their value system, and ditching those that don't. Having said that, on the flip side, a recent survey by Getty Images of about 10,000 people, 81% said that they saw themselves as being eco-friendly, but only 50% would buy products from brands that are trying to be eco-friendly. So there is a disconnect between those consumers who are actually walking the walk, not just talking to the talk. We are actually, as a business, we're finalising a model that is a sustainability health measure for brands that our clients can use to determine the level of sustainable measures that align to your brand's positioning and current and future goals. It'll also provide objective sustainability advice. So we're not owned by anyone else but ourselves. So we have no allegiance to glass, plastic, label producers, whoever. So we will be able to give you objective sustainable advice to clients. Now, in conjunction with our model, the Australian Packaging Covenant also has a really useful guidelines called the Sustainable Packaging Guidelines. They're not that long, about 40 pages, but they are really useful to review. If you can't find it on the internet, just email me and I will send you a PDF. So they have 10 major tenets. So they're looking about designing for recovery. So reuse, recycling, composting, and energy recovery. They're looking to optimise material efficiency, reduce waste, eliminate any hazardous productions, using recycled and renewable materials, minimising litter, making sure that your transport is really efficient, designing for accessibility, and importantly, providing consumer information on sustainability. When you actually, the first couple of pages are devoted to companies sort of at every level, those just entering into this sustainability world, those who are more entrenched, and those who are really driving, those big corporation clients who are really driving the agenda. And you can then kind of slip into wherever fits your model. But in terms of that last point about providing consumer information on sustainability, there are lots of ways that we can do this. So AR technology, we would all know, is something that brands like 19 Crimes have done incredibly well at, with a kind of entertainment platform and an ability to really demonstrate their brand's personality. But you can actually use that AR technology to share your sustainable practices, your circular economy initiatives, that are employed with the production of each wine. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all about entertainment and singing and dancing. It can actually be a really great way to inform consumers of what you're doing in terms of the winery. You can also use your packaging to give consumers information or even instructions. So if it's a wine bottle, if it's a reuse, you know, do you need to clean it? How do you flatten your cartons in order to improve recyclability? Do you take off the caps? Do you leave them on? That sort of information is really helpful to consumers to show them that you're really thinking about sustainability. And then we really need to remember the gatekeeper. We know that all of the retailers are placing more and more emphasis on demanding sustainable practices from their suppliers. So Woolworths, in their sustainability plan for 2025, said, as Australia and New Zealand's largest retailer, we care deeply about our impact on the planet, people and the planet. And we want to go further than just minimising harm. We want to create good. And Brad's and his team have been very, very strong about pushing sustainability at most conferences that I've been to. When EDG has spoken, they have spoken a lot about sustainability, and Coles similarly, as well as the independents. In our opinion, those that don't get on board will be hurt financially down the track, and I think we all want to be on the right side of history. So that concludes my presentation. I would love to hear some of your questions, and I hope to be able to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rowena. And it's just great to hear that there's a company like Denomination out there that is taking the lead in this area and helping clients to strive towards having more sustainable brands and businesses, because I'm sure there's plenty out there that would love to achieve what some of those examples that you've shared with us. But I think it's very much the how from where they are now. We do already have a number of questions for you, so I will just get straight into them. The first one is, are there any tools available for brand owners to understand whole of life carbon impact of different packaging materials? I know that you referred to the sustainable packaging guidelines in your presentation. Is there anything in addition to that you'd recommend?
Oh, there are tools. It is challenging to get one thing that is relevant to our industry, which is why we're actually developing our model, because we've actually found it really hard to get all of the information together. If the person who's asked me wants to just email me, I can certainly send through some links and let them know when our model is going to be available, because I think that there is so much out there, and there's so many conflicting models, and there's not one that you can just go to and plug in all your details and it goes, ta-da, here you are.
Completely understand. Thank you. The next question is, how long do you think it will take for some of these innovations to be commercially available and viable for Australian companies?
I think it's happening very fast. So, you know, if I look at where we were 3 years ago to today, things are progressing very quickly. So the examples of those Raffle Tack examples, I think, show that companies like Raffle Tack, and there are you know, the other paper suppliers are doing really good things as well, are really driving that agenda. Now, they are available in Australia as we speak, so you can certainly take advantage of them right now. Things like the Coronas cluster, where they're actually using the barley straw, obviously that is proprietary, but they will be bringing out those materials into Australia as well. I think the thing for us is we need to really be putting pressure on our governments to increase the recycling that we do here, and to really be looking at plastics, because you know, when I started thinking about wine, I was thinking, well, it's just label and glass and some metal on the screw cap, but actually we use a lot of plastic in our industry, and that is a real concern. And when we look at how much plastic we need to get, single-use plastic we need to get out of the environment, it's massive. So we need to be thinking about other materials and other ways of transport and label application to ensure that we're either using 100% recycled plastic or another material other than plastic.
Yep, absolutely. The next question, Rowena, is sustainable produced materials are generally more expensive and would therefore increase the COGS. Do you think there is a desire for brands to spend more for sustainably sourced materials and for consumers to pay more if they know that the products they are buying are more sustainable? Sorry,
there's lots of questions in that one. So there's been a lot of research to say that yes, consumers will pay more if it's communicated to them why they are paying more. And that's what you see about the growth of organic wines, organic produce, and sustainable packaging, is that not all consumers, but some consumers who value sustainability and environment will actually put their money where their mouth is. In terms of, sorry, what was the first part of the question? That was the last part.
Just about them being more expensive and the increase in COGS for the business, so the increase for the company to invest in sustainability, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a conversation that we need to have with our retailers as well as our consumers. The retailers are really pushing sustainability. They would or should understand that comes at a cost, and therefore there will need to be a cost increase to accommodate that. Some of those sustainable measures actually don't cost that much more or cost less, depending, if you're actually changing paper stocks from a virgin paper stock to virgin tree fibre paper stock to a recycled stock. The recycled stock can sometimes be less. So it's not necessarily, sustainability equals more expensive. And lighter weight glass costs a lot less than a really heavy bottle. But I think when you're doing that, it's a matter of really communicating to your consumers why you're doing it, why it's now a lightweight glass bottle, why the paper isn't bright white anymore. And I think consumers in this day and age understand that. They like to be told and reaffirmed, and then that connection with the brand becomes much stronger, and you get increased loyalty that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The next question, are there any emission figures on the difference between the production of aluminium and lightweight bottles?
I'm sure there would be. I don't have them to hand. There is an argument in terms of the energy required to produce aluminium versus glass and the actual fuel that is used. So there are all these different ways that you can cut it. Like, are you using biofuels? Are you using non-renewables? So it really depends on what you're using. But in general, from my understanding, when you're doing virgin aluminium, it's higher in terms of the emissions. When you're using recycled, it is lower. And I don't have those statistics for glass, but I can certainly find out. Again, if the person wants to email me, I can find that out overnight.
Excellent, thank you. Do you expect CDL to be implemented for the wine industry across Australia, and if so, when?
Do I expect what?
CDL to be implemented.
CDL.
I might need Chris to maybe type in clarification on that term, and we might just move on to the next question while he's doing that.
Thank you.
Is the Avery Denizen grape touch stock available in Australia? Nicole's asking.
Yes, I believe so. So if you contact CCL or MCC, I'm sure they'll be able to get that for you.
Great. And just going back to that previous question, thanks, Chris. CDL stands for Container Deposit Legislation.
Right, sorry.
Do you expect that to be implemented in the wine industry across Australia? And if so, when?
I really am not qualified to answer that. I would love to. Obviously, it's something that is happening a lot in Europe, who are just much better at recycling than us and container collection than us.
Right, thank you. And how have you found that companies switching to lightweight bottles have been able to keep a premium reputation for their brand? That's a really interesting question, actually.
Yeah, look, it's really hard. You know, as a designer, we love heavy bottles. You know, they feel so beautiful in the hand, and for years, you know, heavy glass has been equated with a premium solution. I think you have to work harder with your graphics in order to overcome that perception of the lightness of the glass, but also just communicate with consumers why you've done it. And if you do that, then they will understand that you're being a good corporate citizen first, rather than an instant pleasure for a consumer.
Absolutely. And I think our last question, Rowena, today, apart from bag-in-box and aluminium, what other alternative packaging formats would you see as having potential, i.e. Tetra Pak?
Yeah, I think Tetra Pak is an interesting one as well. It's the issue with Tetra Pak is how do you actually keep the wine secure and stable without a plastic lining. So the linings there are linings for Tetra Pak that you know keep the liquid inside, but none of them, to my knowledge, actually are airtight like the wine demands. So wine is particular, right? It's not like other forms of beverages that can have a little more leakage. We need that wine to be absolutely secure. But there is a lot of talk about Tetra Pak, and I expect to see some interesting things coming out very soon. Pouches with that glass of, we've done quite a few pouches in Europe. We haven't seen many in Australia, apart from that glass of, that's the only one that I've seen. So pouches obviously have an advantage of the lightweight solution. I think what is interesting, and this is the thing about sustainability, is this moving feast. When we talk about lightweight glass, lightweight pouches, etc. When we talk about that to our European clients, they are less interested in weight, because all of their fleets, trucking fleets by 2030 will be run on electrics. So they will be run on renewable energy. So therefore the weight becomes far less of an issue than, say, it is in Australia, where it is run on fuel. So we've got a lot to catch up on generally within this country in terms of all things sustainability. But at the moment, given that we don't have anywhere near that sort of legislation with our transport, weight will continue to be an issue. So we have to find things like pouches, cans, lightweight glass, etc., to help.
Wonderful, thank you. And I did say that was the last question, and we've got one final question, I think, that just come in. There is IT technology such as QR codes and RFID asset tags, which can track wine from harvest to consumer to avoid counterfeit wines entering wine markets and seeking purchased wine information. The question is, do you think wine packaging should also be tracked or searched by scanning a bottle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the farm to table is a really interesting one. I actually had a point in there which I took out because I had something about blockchain technology, which is a whole another argument. But I think, yeah, as part of the sustainability message, if you can actually track the packaging, then it should be like everything else, you know, your vineyard sourcing, the chemicals you use, everything, it should be part of that whole spectrum. So it definitely can be done. And QR codes are another way of really good communication tool, apart from AR, to just get you directly to, you know, to sources like, you know, a quick page on the sustainability of your pack or of your wine straight away. And I think, you know, COVID's actually taught us that QR codes can be really simple, because now we're just scanning them and bang, it pops up and we're all good.
And another question that's come in, is there any information on what the export requirements that we will need to abide by in the future? I'm thinking that might be a hard one for you to answer and might be more of a Wine Australia question, but you're very welcome to.
That's definitely a Wine Australia question.
Yeah. Thanks. Excellent. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions for today. Thank you so much, Rowena. It was such great insight and something I think for as an industry for us to aspire to. And I think as you highlighted, everybody doesn't have to do it on the massive scale of some of those examples. You can start small, make a difference and build up within your brand as to what you want to achieve in the sustainability space. So thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who's attended today. WCA's next webinar will be held on Tuesday, the 11th of May and presented by Georgia Rasmussen. And the webinar is going to cover direct-to-consumer sales, growing your customer list and driving up conversation metrics at your cellar door. So it's a great one to register for. And for all our WCA members, these recordings from this webinar and previous webinars are held on our website in the members section. All Wine Australia sponsored webinars are available on the WCA YouTube channel. So please go to our website to find these recordings. If you have any suggestions on webinar topics you'd like us to cover in this year's program, please don't hesitate to email me at wca@winecommunicators.com.au. Thanks again for your time today, and we hope you have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rowena.
Pleasure.